How did relations with Midian deteriorate so rapidly that Moses carries out a genocide against the nation that harbored him when he fled Egypt? Near the end of the book of Numbers, many Israelite men are brought into the circle of Baal Peor, a local deity, worship with Moabite women, and have sexual relations with them. The Israelite camp is infiltrated by a Midianite princess, Cosbi, the daughter of the prince of Midian, who consorts with a prince of the tribe of Simon in full view of Moses and the nation, leading to a plague that kills 24,000 people, mostly from Simon. Yet, God commands Moses to destroy Midian, not Moab. In the battle, the Midianites are routed, including Balaam. The text records that their cities were burned to the ground, all the men killed, and women and children taken along with the spoils of war. But Moses is still upset and commands any non-virgin female be put to death as well. Midian was Moses' adopted nation. He escaped from Egypt with a death warrant on his head and was taken in by Jethro and his family. Due to the fact that there was a regional manhunt and possible reward, the Midianites would have figured out who Moses was. Not only did Jethro, an influential priest of Midian, take him in, but the entire Midianite nation provided Moses with sanctuary. Moses had once been one of them, yet years later he leads an army that attempts to eradicate them in a scorched earth campaign where all cities, males, and most females are eliminated. How did this happen? How could they go from Moses being a full-fledged Midianite to his attempting to wipe them off the face of the earth? While the Torah never explicitly tells us how relations collapsed, if we read several overlooked passages, an intriguing possibility emerges. The political rupture between Israel and Midian may have begun inside Moses' marriage. A brief set of verses in Numbers 10 hints to a souring of the relationship between Moses and his Midianite kin. Moses invites Hobab, his brother-in-law, to stay with the Israelites during their desert travels, but Hobab declines the offer, saying he will return to Midian. But then Moses says something that can be easily overlooked. Please don't leave us, because you know our encampment's in the desert. Moses doesn't trust Hobab and his entourage. He wants him to stay because he's afraid he'll give away weaknesses and vulnerabilities of the encampment to enemies. Moses is worried. Hobab leaves, and a few chapters later, Moses is proven correct, for the Midianites attacked the Israelites' weakness in a way only an insider would know, through sex and idolatry. But where does Moses' suspicion come from? Where did the relationship rupture? Why didn't Hobab stay? In the portion called Jethro, Moses is working for his father-in-law as a shepherd. Moses was a full Midianite in dress, speech, diet, and even mentality. At this point, God introduces himself to Moses at the burning bush, and Moses' life is changed forever. Moses, the Midianite shepherd, is replaced by Moses, the Israelite leader. His personal agenda is no longer in his control. The first victims of friendly fire in Moses' life are his family. Moses has gone to Egypt at God's command, and one can understand his not bringing his young children and wife to join the oppressed slave community. In fact, when Moses is called, he consults with Jethro, who says, "Go in peace." However, the next we see Jethro, he's coming to see Moses and bringing Moses' neglected family with him. One can imagine Zipporah is unhappy, raising two young sons without their father, who has left them without giving any indication of when he'll return. One might also surmise that her brother Hobab is irate at the treatment of his sister. Zipporah probably felt abandoned by Moses. Jethro, her father, is a man of action. He takes his daughter and grandsons and travels to the Israelite camp. In a verse replete with sarcasm, Jethro introduces himself and Moses' family to the estranged father. He said to Moses, "I am your father-in-law Jethro, who is coming to you, and your wife and her two sons are with her." Jethro doesn't call them your sons, referring to Moses, but her sons, referring to Zipporah. This is an angry man, but he's playing it cool despite the sarcasm. "Hi, do you remember us?" would have been equally effective. Moses understands their sentiments immediately. The role of negligent father is not one he wants to be in. He reacts accordingly to appease his angry family. He must attend to the surprise entourage, realizing he's neglected them, and make amends. He bows down as a supplicant, someone apologetic. He kisses Jethro and whisks him off to his tent, where he won't be disturbed. But Moses needs Jethro to understand he's legitimately inundated with work and immediately explains to his guest about everything that's been happening. He indicates there was no way for him to retrieve his family. He implies he's not negligent, just very busy working for God. Jethro is a seasoned diplomat and says the right words to Moses. "Blessed is the Lord who saved you from the hand of Egypt and Pharaoh, who saved the nation from under the hand of Egypt." But he's in the Israelite camp to set things straight between Moses and his daughter. The text doesn't dither. Moses is indeed busy, but Jethro is a wise man and sees that he needs to observe Moses and help repair his daughter's life. The conventional wisdom of this episode is that Jethro came to see the Israelites as if on vacation, and his advice to Moses is to help his son-in-law. But that's not the case. His goal is to help his daughter restore her marriage. This is the purpose of the trip. The father-in-law of Moses saw what he was doing to the people. He said, "What is this thing that you are doing to the people? Why do you sit alone and the entire nation stands upon you from morning until evening?" Jethro must have taken Moses aside and let him know that his marriage was doomed if he didn't make legitimate changes. Jethro found the answer for Moses: share power. Moses' father-in-law said to him, "It is not good that which you are doing." You can still sense Jethro's displeasure with Moses, but he sees his son-in-law struggling with an insane schedule. Jethro proposes a complete overhaul of the power structure of the Israelite society, and it's exactly the right formula. Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did everything he said. We can assume everything he said referred to more than the proposal about appointing officers to govern the people. Jethro was able to depart knowing he had saved his daughter's marriage. Moses sent off his father-in-law. He went to his land. But did he save the marriage? The first sign that Moses was married to the nation, not Zipporah, and had forfeited his family life is in Exodus 15:20, where Miriam is referred to as Aaron's sister. There's no mention of Moses being Miriam's brother. In fact, Moses' family disappears completely from the text. Zipporah doesn't appear again in the biblical text, nor do her 2 sons, which is very striking since Aaron's sons and grandsons are regularly in the text. However, there may be an indirect mention of Zipporah in Numbers 12. Miriam and Aaron are talking, quote, regarding the Cushite woman he had taken because he had taken a Cushite woman. The following verse is difficult to comprehend as it seems to change subjects entirely. They said, "Has God only spoken with Moses? Has he not also spoken with us?" Nachmanides, in Deuteronomy 24:9, connects the dots. Moses was maintaining a level of purity in order to communicate with God. Consequently, he could never be with his wife physically. Miriam learned of this and told Aaron, "We also have prophecy and we don't keep a level of purity all the time, so why should Moses?" If this is the case, then perhaps the contingent of Midianites felt insulted that Zipporah, their former possible heir to the throne, was being neglected. Moses was again ignoring his wife and leaving her isolated and alienated. If Zipporah was complaining and Miriam heard, perhaps others, such as her family, also learned that she was a woman spurned. However, this doesn't explain why Miriam is calling Zipporah a Cushite woman. Most of the commentators understand this to mean she was black-skinned, being that many Egyptians who comprised the stragglers, or Erev Rav, were with Israel. There likely would have been many dark-skinned individuals in the Israelite camp. It's hard to buy into Zipporah being called dark-skinned. Perhaps Miriam is saying something else. What if she's referring to another woman entirely, as Rashbam cites? If Moses had kept Zipporah estranged and never paid his family attention and then took a second wife, which a pure reading of the text seems to indicate, wouldn't Hobab and his group of Midianites be upset? Would their feelings be so strong that it could come to the attention of Moses, who would then consider these people dangerous and potentially harmful to the camp? If this is how it played out, and Moses tried to keep them within the confines of the camp, promising them, "It will be good for you if they stay," we could understand why the Midianites left, feeling their princess, Zipporah, had been betrayed by Moses. Then they devised a plan of vengeance against the Israelites, using another one of their princesses. It's also very telling that they used one of their princesses to have sex with an Israelite leader when another of their princesses, Zipporah, was being sexually shunned by the great Israelite leader, Moses. It's also easier to comprehend why God ordered their total annihilation after they took advantage of their insider information about the Israelite camp and drove many Israelite men to sin sexually and worship idolatry. It's somewhat ironic that if the term Cushite really does mean black, that Miriam was punished for her inappropriate speech by receiving biblical leprosy, which involves her skin turning white as snow. That Moses, once a full-fledged Midianite, led a campaign of genocide against his former people, including Jethro and his entire family, is a lesson that in politics and leadership, relationships can sour very quickly when expectations differ. Whether every element of this reconstruction is correct can never be known. However, it explains something the traditional reading never adequately addresses: why Moses distrusts Hobab, why Midian turns hostile, and why Moses wages one of the Torah's harshest wars against the very nation that saved his life. This story reminds us that history often turns not only on nations, armies, and foreign policy, but even on a single broken family, unfulfilled expectations, personal emotions, which can lead to a collapse of relationships that can snowball into open conflict on a grander scale. Thanks for watching.